Hello dear viewers, and welcome to another video from me here in the ancient dwarven hold of our ancestors. Today, rather than looking at a new game, which more is coming of course, we'll be having another talk about Baldur's Gate 3. While chatting to some friends about different aspects of Baldur's Gate and D&D 5th edition, on which it is based, we noticed there were several things that at least one of us wasn't so sure about, so I thought perhaps others might not be exactly sure about a few things as well, and would appreciate a video concerning the most standout of them. So here we are, a list of things that is useful to know about Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition and Baldur's Gate 3. Before we get cracking, dear viewers, I just thought I'd have a quick word about the D20. D&D and Baldur's Gate 3 uses the D20 or 20-sided dice system when deciding the outcome of situations. This usually entails rolling a D20 for some action or skill, adding any specific modifiers, and then comparing the result to a certain difficulty level. You see this in game when you literally get to roll the dice, but it is also used for combat, perception and other aspects of the game. If you roll a 1 on a D20, it is always a fail, regardless of modifiers. If you roll a natural 20, you always pass, no matter the difficulty or negative modifiers. Sometimes you will get advantage on a roll. This means you roll 2d20 and use the highest value. A disadvantage means 2 dice are rolled, but you must pick the lowest. Number 1. Armour Class. The first thing to talk about is AC, or Armour Class. You might be wondering exactly how the hit chance is decided when you select an attack on an enemy. Well, let me tell you now, dear viewers. Each character in game has an Armour Class. A character's Armour Class represents how difficult they are to hit when struck by an attack. This is affected by the armour the character is wearing, such as leather armour, chainmail, or has a shield, etc. There are other factors such as adding your dexterity bonus and certain spells that can increase this, but this is the general gist. For example, a plain old goblin in leather armour with a shield might have an AC of 15. When you make an attack with a character, usually with a physical weapon, but certain spells too, the attacker rolls a d20 or 20-sided dice and adds certain modifiers to the roll, such as their proficiency and modifiers from an attribute, commonly strength. You then add the number rolled on the dice with your proficiency and attribute bonus to arrive at your final score. For example, if I was swinging a sword as a mighty dwarf, I would roll a d20, then add 2 for the proficiency with that weapon, plus 2 from my strength modifier. Imagine I rolled a 12 on the dice. I add to that plus 2 proficiency and plus 2 strength bonus, equaling 16 in total. This value is now compared to the AC value of the Goblin? Gorblimey, governor! Right, let's try that again. The value is now compared to the AC value of the Goblin, which was 15. If your final score is equal to or greater than the given AC value, then dear viewers, you have succeeded in striking your opponent. If the number is below, you have sadly missed, but hope to strike again soon. So, if you have a high AC or Armour Class, you will be harder to hit by your opponent. In Baldur's Gate 3, it is a good idea to have at least one character with a high AC, so when fighting baddies they can hope to shrug off any blows that they make. Number 2. Attributes. Attributes in D&D, and therefore Baldur's Gate, reflect the various strengths and weaknesses of a given character. These are strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. The value of any of these for any given character affects the bonus applied to appropriate rolls made in-game. 10 is the base neutral value for an attribute. This denotes the player having no positive or negative bonus. For each value of 2 past the 10, the character will gain a +1 bonus for relevant checks. For example, a character with 12 will have a +1 bonus, whereas a character with 14 strength will have a bonus of +2. It is possible to go into a negative value if you have a value below the base 10. For example, a character with 8 intelligence will have a -1 modifier for relevant skill checks. Certain classes in Baldur's Gate 3 use specific stats when attacking and casting spells, like a wizard using their int modifier when casting attack spells like Firebolt. This means when building that character specifically, it is useful to have a high intelligence modifier. Number 3. Perception. As you've been moving around the world in Baldur's Gate 3, you'll have likely seen a perception roll going off and usually failing as you walk by a clump of rocks or in a dangerous dungeon. You might be wondering what exactly this is all about. Well, let me tell you, dear viewers. As a character moves around a scene, their ability to notice things of interest is known as their passive perception. This is a specific value that is usually equal to 10 plus your wisdom modifier, though other bonuses like proficiency can apply. If there is some secret thing you might notice, it also has a specific value which you compare to the passive perception of the character. As usual, if it meets or is higher than the difficulty score, then you have noticed that secret thing. For example, if your wisdom modifier is +2, so 14 wisdom, added to 10, it is 12. Perhaps there is a secret book on a shelf requiring 12 to notice it. Your character's perception equals that of the secret book, so they will notice it without specifically looking around the room. Now, dear viewers, you are probably asking, then why is it rolling then? This is because the passive perception of your character is lower than the specific value for the hidden thing. Let's say you have a +1 wisdom modifier instead of 2 before. You now have 11 rather than 12, which means you have not passively noticed the secret thing. In Baldur's Gate 3, it appears that the game decides to automatically actively search for something when you are close. This now calls for a perception check. The game will automatically roll a d20 and add your wisdom modifier plus any other relevant modifiers and compare it to the 12. If you rolled a 15, for example, you would add 1 to it and arrive at 16. This value is way higher than 12, so you have successfully discovered the secret book by actively looking for it. Number 4. Preparing spells. In Baldur's Gate 3, certain classes will have a set of spells of which they know. These are all the spells they know of at their given level. This can be quite a large number of spells, and each with their own associated level. Classes like wizards, clerics and paladins are required to prepare spells they wish to use during gameplay. Prepared spells are a specific list of spells from your known spells that can be cast between long rests, and is usually denoted by your spellcasting modifier plus your level. From the spells you know, you must pick a number of them that are prepared for the coming session. For example, a 5th level wizard might have an intelligence modifier of +4, which means they have 18 intelligence, which means they will have a total of 9 spells they can prepare. Only the spells prepared before a rest will be available to use, not every spell that you know. This means the available spells to use will nearly always be smaller than all the spells your character actually knows. You can cast any of the spells however many times you wish, depending on your spell slots, which is a different specific number and level of spells you can cast between rests. Some classes, like sorcerers, do not need to prepare spells, but many classes do. 5. Actions. In general, in combat in Baldur's Gate 3, when it is a character's turn to activate, they will be able to move a certain distance, perform an action, and a bonus action before their turn is over. Casting spells, fighting, jumping, throwing stuff, etc. all take actions to perform. So you can move about the scene, then use your action to do something like smacking Evilry upside the head, and then perhaps use a bonus action to do something else. Generally, to cast one spell or take a swing at a bad guy, you will use up your action for the go. So it is a good idea to remember what spells or abilities will cost your character their action for the turn. Bonus actions are a subset of abilities that you can perform even after having used your action for the turn. Some spells and special attacks can be used as a bonus action, which means you might be able to heal someone or perform a different attack to a foe than you used your action for. Again, it is useful to be aware of what skills use a bonus action, which is handily set out on the action bar, so you can plan how you might use your character that turn. Some abilities might be so strong that they will consume not only your action, but your bonus action for the turn, so be mindful when using these skills. 6. Concentration. Sometimes in battle, you might notice that a spell effect suddenly stops, noted with a line going through its name. This is because certain spells like Bless or Cool Lightning require the caster to be concentrating. This means your player needs to focus their mind to concentrate on that specific spell. In Baldur's Gate 3 terms, this means when you cast a spell that requires concentration, your character will be noted as concentrating on that spell. While they are doing so, the spell's effects will stay in play, i.e. your bless will linger on the players you cast it on. You can act as normal while concentrating, being able to attack and move around the scene. There are 3 main reasons a character might lose concentration and end the spell. The first is that the spell expired of its own accord naturally. For example, Bless lasted 10 turns. The second is that you cast a different spell that required concentration. A character can only ever concentrate on one spell at a time. The final reason is that the character took damage. When a character concentrating on a spell is damaged, the game will perform a difficulties check to see if the damage interrupts your concentration. If it does, the spell effect will stop immediately. Of course, if you die, then the spell obviously stops as well. And there we have it, dear viewers. Another video from me here in the ancient dwarven hold of our ancestors. I hope that if you were unsure about any of the topics covered here, that you might now know a little bit more about them, which will help you out as you play through the game. Thank you, and I shall see you next time.